drop and give me 25. I'm the gunny.
It's time for the gunny.
The quarter deck. Lights. Get online right now. You got 10, 9, 8, 7, 6, 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, 0. Hello, my bunch of knuckle-dragging, beer-drinking, hard-charging devil dogs. You're listening to The Quarter Deck. I am your host, Miguel, the Gunny Signs.
Get off the bus!
I do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend
The Constitution of the United States.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.
Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, and welcome to another episode of The Quarter Deck with Miguel, the Gunny Signs. I hope everybody had a great Thanksgiving and spent a lot of good time with your family and were able to get your bellies full of turkey, ham, or whatever your pleasure is, and now you're ready to move on to the Christmas holidays. This week on The Quarter Deck, we're going to continue on with our reading of our book. With the 1st Marine Division in Iraq of 2003, No Greater Friend, No Worse Enemy, we're going to talk about fires planning. Now it's time for Colonel Russo to get the 11th Marines plan into place so they are able to support the infantry that's going to be there on the ground. This week in our hero highlights, we're going to take a look at Colonel Gregory Pappy Boyington, United States Marine Corps Reserve. And we're going to listen to his story, an aviator, a pilot, and the things that he did to earn him the Congressional Medal of Honor. But not only that, he's a survivor. He was a surviving Medal of Honor recipient. This week marks a special day in the calendar of every year, and we're going to discuss the story and the life of one of my good friends, a brother, a Marine, Staff Sergeant Vincent Bell. Now, most of you know him because I've talked about him in the past, but he is one of the young Marines that I was able to bring into the Marine Corps. I mean bringing him in as actually checking him into my unit. And we'll get into a little bit more about talking about him and the meaning of what he did, that he ultimately gave the ultimate sacrifice for our great nation and our country. The Quarter Deck. If you're just joining us, you're listening to The Quarter Deck with Miguel, the Gunny Signs. Can you guys believe it? November is in the rear view mirror. It's gone. Now, every year, especially for us artillerymen, November 30th is a very special day in our hearts. And I say that because November 30th is when we lost a great friend, a brother, a younger brother from another mother, as I used to call him, a great Marine, a hero of this great nation of ours, Staff Sergeant Vincent Bell. Now, Staff Sergeant Bell was just a young little PFC when I first met him. He had just graduated from Fort Sill, Oklahoma, and he came to us to Sierra Battery 5th Battalion, 11th Marines, as we were preparing to do some of our training on board the ship, the USS Pearl Harbor, to get ready to go on our Western Pacific float. He had just finished school in Fort Sill, Oklahoma for his initial artillery MOS training, and we picked him up from the airport, took him straight to Camp Pendleton, California, and I can remember because they were just there looking at us when we picked them up. Took him there, got him his gear, put him back in the van, and drove straight back to the San Diego Naval Station where we got ready to board our ship, getting ready to head out to sea. So what a great surprise that he and 4 other Marines that were coming with him got there. Now, Staff Sergeant Bell is not only, a good friend. In the Marine Corps, I've always said that I have so many brothers, so many sisters, but I have millions of kids. As I call the younger Marines, they're my children. They're basically there that I'm going to take care of them. I'll be there to mentor them and help them out as they grew out through their career. And he was no exception. He was like a sponge. He learned everything that we taught him, everything that we threw at him. He succeeded and wanted to make sure that he did everything to the best of his ability that he could. And I didn't expect anything else from him because I knew the potential that he had to be a Marine. And by no means did he ever disappoint. He exceeded every expectation that we threw at him. and he did such a great and outstanding job. When I left Sierra Battery in 2004 to head out to the drill field, he stayed with Sierra Battery for a little while, and then he left. I was gone to the drill field, so I never knew anything or what happened. I didn't run into him again until I got back from the drill field in 2007 when I went back to 5th Battalion, 11th Marines again in Camp Pendleton, California, when I was assigned to Tango Battery. He came back, and now he was assigned to Sierra Battery again. He was there with them, and they were still shooting the M1908 howitzers, and we had already done our training to convert over to the HIMARS systems, the rocket launch system that the Marine Corps now uses. And I can remember distinctly that we were at a field training exercise down there in 29 Palms, California. I want to say we were either in the Blacktop training area or in Quackenbush. But we had the whole battalion set up there. We had Tango Battery, Romeo, and then we had Sierra Battery. Now, Tango Battery was the first battery to actually get trained up on the HIMARS. So here we had Sierra and Romeo still with the howitzers. That was the old M1908s that we had back then. So we were shooting a fire mission. And here we have the artillery battery shooting. They're shooting like a 5 or 6 round mission. So all we hear is fire mission, stand by, fire, boom, 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 boom. We hear the gunfire, going off, and they're shooting. And then they tell us to stand by, fire. And so here we have 6 launchers in the battery, and we had all 6 of them online, and we shot 2 rockets apiece, and it was like dead silence. It wasn't until after we had a sit down, a meeting with each other, that he comes up to me. He's like, God damn it. He's like, we were over there shooting and shooting. Like, yeah, we're badasses. We shot all our rounds fast and we're good. And then we look over to the side over there and we see you fuckers just shooting rockets downrange, making us look all bad. He didn't mean that in any bad way, but that's just the kind of sense of humor that he had. He was a kind of Marine that you just grew to love. Even if you didn't know him or anything else, he was always there to bring a spark to your day, to make every day the best that you can possibly make it. And that's one of the great things that I remember about him. Now, most of you that know me, you know that I've told you guys before, and I've talked about this a lot with Nick Romer. He's the owners of Bell's Old Glory Shop, a shadow box making shop that he dedicates his work to making shadow boxes in the memory of Staff Sergeant Vincent Bell, also a great friend of his and a fellow artilleryman. About 1.5 years ago, when I was still doing my master's program at the Academy of Art University, I worked with Nick Romer and his wife Hannah from Bell's Old Glory Shop, and we did a documentary, a story about what he does and the foundations that he supports with the donations that he makes to them every single year. If you hadn't had a chance to actually go there and look at it, take a look at my website, MiguelSciencePhotography.com, and you can see the link to all my videos. It will take you to my YouTube channel, which is just Miguel Science Photography, and you can see the documentary that I did there for Bell's Old Glory Shop. And also, I have a couple other documentaries that are on there regarding PTSD, the changes and symptoms, and how change and how things can be actually better, even though you are dealing with some kind of PTSD. That night, I think that we completed all the recording and the interview in like about an hour. But it took me about 3 hours to get everything completed. But it wasn't just because I was sitting there doing the interviews and doing the video recordings, but we were just talking. We were talking about Staff Sergeant Bell and, the memories that we had with him and how I met him, how he met him, and just, what it meant to us to actually get the opportunity to have him be part of our lives. And the one thing that I shared with him was that my last deployment that I went to Afghanistan, in Fabs-Zabrughi in Kajaki in Afghanistan, that was probably by far the worst deployment that I have ever been on. And I say that because we lost a lot of Marines during that deployment. We lost a lot of Marines. A lot of our Marines got injured during that deployment. So it was one of the harder ones that we went through. And Staff Sergeant Bell's battery was the battery that replaced us when we were about to leave. My battery was out of Camp Lejeune, North Carolina. I was with Bravo Battery, 1st Battalion, 10th Marines. And he was from 11th Marines coming down from Camp Pendleton, California. And I can remember because he had sent me emails and asking me about the area. And I can only tell him so much because we were still in country, so I couldn't really tell him too much of it. But he wanted to know everything about that country, what it was, that fob and so forth, everything else, because he knew that he was going to be heading there with his battery. And it just so happened that the battery was going to replace us there in our fob. And, you know, once he got into country, I was already gone. I was already gone at advanced party, so I didn't really get a chance to have a face-to-face with him. But he made it a point that me and him always talked. We had video chats all the time. And I don't even remember what we used. I don't know if it was WhatsApp, what the heck we used as far as a video chatting service, but I don't remember. But anyway, we always had our video chats, and I just checked up on him to see how he was doing, make sure that the Marines were doing good and that he was staying safe. That was my main concern because I was very familiar with the area that he was in, where the Marines were patrolling, the things that they were doing there, because my Marines had just got done completing all those exact same things. And I can remember that I talked to him the week before Thanksgiving. I talked to him that November 30th. November 30th is when he lost his life. But I talked to him about a week before that. And we were sitting there just talking. He was talking to me about some of the issues that they were having over a certain area with a tree line that they had issues with. And, you know, and I told him, yeah, I know. I know exactly which one you were talking about because we had the same issues. And I just reminded him, like, hey, remember, you got to be careful there because it is nothing there but infested with IEDs. And you can't be seen by our outpost out there to see where the Marines are going or what's going on, especially at nighttime. You can't see anything of whatever's going on there. So, you know, I just reminded him to make sure that he remembered, let his Marines know to be safe, especially around that area. Now, of course, we didn't talk in that much detail because we were talking over a video chat, but, you know, I made sure that he understood and remembered that. And then I remember on November 30th, I was in the office in Camp Lejeune down there, and I get a phone call from one of my other Marines that was down there in California. And he calls me. It was about 10:30 in the morning that he called me. And he's hyperventilating, and he's trying to tell me something like, hey, what's going on? And all he said was, they got him. They got him. I'm like, what are you talking about? They got who? And then he told me, hey, Bell. I'm like, what about Bell? I just talked to him. I just talked to him. He's doing good. He's like, no. And that's when he told me that he had stepped on an IED in that exact same tree line that we were just talking about. And I mean, I know the kind of Marine he is. He's going to be leading the way. He's going to get in front of his Marines and head in there before they do. So it wasn't unexpected that he was the kind of Marine that did that, but it was way too soon for him to go. And for that, you know, every day I always say that I take it day by day, and I appreciate everything that I have because I'm here. You know, we had our close calls, we had our situations that we had in our deployments and all those things that we did, but I'm here. And unfortunately, there's other Marines that just didn't make it back. This November 30th marks one of those days. Every year, it's a little difficult during this time. And, you know, and it sucks. It sucks because a lot of the dates and the time that we lost the Marines when we were down there in that deployment, it all happened during the damn holidays. Everything happened during the holidays. During Thanksgiving, Christmas, New Year's time. So sometimes it can be difficult, especially being here and, you know, remembering those dates and what happened during that time. It's hard. And sometimes it can be very difficult to explain to your family, your wife, your kids, you know, why you feel a certain way. But throughout the years, I've learned and I understood how to be better. It's not their fault that, you know, I go to certain things or my emotions are a certain way that I have to be alone. I don't want to be around anybody. But the holidays is for family, to be around family and stuff, and that can be a hard thing to do. One thing that I learned throughout the years is that, you know, I can deal with that stuff, and I've found different ways to be able to deal with that. But my point is that, you know, we can't forget those individuals that have lost their life and their families. You know, to the Bell family, my heart goes out to them every single year because I know how difficult it can be, how difficult it is. In 2016, after I retired, I got a job working for the VA, and they sent me down there to Washington, D.C. to go and do some training down there at one of the hotels down there. And I made it a point when I was down there that I took the subway, which was the first time me taking the subway or the metro, whatever the heck they call it down there. But I took the metro. It was about 2 other Marines and myself. Took the train. We headed down there to Arlington Cemetery because I told them I have to go to Arlington Cemetery. I hadn't seen Bill. I hadn't seen him since that time that I talked to him in video, and I had to find him. I had to go find him. I had to go sit there in his gravesite with him, by his side, and let him know that I was there. It took me about an hour to find his grave. I looked up in the archives and I found the section that he was in, and I couldn't find anything because the tombs are just named or numbered weird. And it was weird because I was sitting there looking for about an hour. The other Marines were helping me trying to find his grave, and I just couldn't find it. And I was just about to give up and stuff, and I'm walking there in the area where it's at. And all of a sudden I felt something. I felt like something telling me to turn around. Hey, look over here. Like almost like if he was there beside me, telling me, hey, I'm right here. And as soon as I turned around and I looked behind me, there was his grave right there. It's almost as if he was there guiding me to make sure that I found it. And I sat there with him for almost about an hour. I sat there and, I brought some beer and I placed one there on his grave and I drank one with him. And I got to tell you, it's probably the worst beer I ever drank because it was already warm because I've had it into my backpack, taking it all the way from the hotel and taking it there. So by that time, they were all nice lukewarm, but I didn't care. I did not care one bit because I was able to enjoy one last beer there with my brother alongside of his grave. And when I left, I had a feeling of closeness. Not closure because I'm never going to have closure for the fact that he lost his life that day. Never going to be that way because we just don't know why things happen. I understand that things happen for a reason, whatever, but sometimes it just ain't fair. It's not fair why those things happen during that time or whatever is going on that's going to make them happen. But the one thing that I do appreciate and I enjoy is that day that I was able to spend that day with him and enjoy that beer with him and was able to leave knowing that I went to go see him. Because I didn't have that opportunity when I was down there. I wasn't able to get a lot of information. I was doing all kinds of training, so I wasn't able to go down there when they buried him in Arlington. But when I found out that he was there, I made that trip. So as we can see, throughout the whole time that you're in active duty in the Marine Corps, you make so many friends. He was not only just a friend, but he was like a brother, a younger brother from another mother, as we all call each other. But those kinds of friendships stick around forever, and his memory will always be alive because he'll be in our hearts, and we'll always make sure that we remember him. So always remember those individuals that we lost, that have given the ultimate sacrifice, whether they're deployed or whatever they've done here for our great nation. Staff Sergeant Bell, miss you. The Quarterdeck is brought to you by Miguel Science Photography. From the beginning of your family to the first birthday and beyond. Whether it's a retirement or a Marine Corps ball, Miguel Science Photography is there to make memories that will last a lifetime. Miguel Science Photography is a certified veteran-owned business. Contact them at miguelsciencephotography.com. What
we're gonna do right here is go back. Way back. Back into time.
The 11th Marines, now called Camp Matilda, its home now in Kuwait since they had arrived into country. Now came a very important part of everything, was the actual planning for fire support for the RCTs that were going to be on the ground, and how the regiment was going to be designated for who was going to provide that general support to each RCT. So let's take a look at it and see what Colonel Marletto was planning and what his idea was and the plans in order to accomplish this mission that was in front of them that was going to happen there in the near future. As the commander of the 11th Marines, Colonel Marletto was also the division's fire support coordinator. Going into this operation, Colonel Marletto's guidance to his staff and subordinate commanders was simple. We must mass to kill the enemy at every opportunity. No pinpricks. His intent was equally succinct and left no doubt with anyone, regardless of rank, as the 11th Marines' purpose, which was to protect the Marines and sailors of the 1st Marine Division from the effects of enemy indirect fire systems. These straightforward words resonated throughout the 11th Marines and were backed up by the regiment's actions during the attacks from northern Kuwait to Al-Qut, Baghdad, and Tikrit. The members of the G3 fire cell that deployed with the forward CP possessed a breadth and depth of fire support expertise that represented the division's commitment to the philosophy that fire support is enabled by building partnerships. Lieutenant Colonel Gary Smythe, the Assistant Division Fire Support Coordinator, led the team. For an Army officer, Marines of the division thought Lieutenant Colonel Smythe was all right. He was the single division officer with the 1st Marine Division patch on his shoulder, and he carried the serious fire support coordination responsibilities on his shoulders as well. The Division Target Information Officer, or TIO, was Chief Warrant Officer Quint Anvetti, a targeting expert. He was the first 0803 Target Acquisition Officer to be assigned to the 11th Marines Fire Support Coordination Sections since the Marine Corps restructured the 0803 Military Occupational Specialty career path. The decision to place greater expertise and technical expertise into the TIO billet was deliberate and recognized the importance of the relationship between intelligence and fires. The team was soon joined by Master Sergeant Brad Lee, the division's observer liaison chief, whose years of fire support experience and knowledge of automated systems would be critical. The division's air officers rounded out the fires team, with Lieutenant Colonel Iron Shank, Major Grams Gramaluga, and Captain Benny Benningson. Both Grams and Benny, who had each been with the division for over 2 years, had earned the trust and respect of their comrades over the months of preparation that had already gone into the fight. These Marines had demonstrated a thorough knowledge and tactically focused mindset that made them superior in their billets. Iron's arrival at late 2002 brought another solid member to the team. The Marines of Forward Fire's team seized the opportunity afforded by the CFLCC exercises to test the division's fire support, communications, nets, and automated fire support coordinating systems. They continued this training during the division's forward CPX and displacement exercises held in the 3rd week of December, while AFATIDS and its companion PC-based software, Effective Management Tool, or the EMT, were a focus of training. The Marines also received instruction by the MEF Information Management Officer, or the IMO, and contractors in the Unit of Command and Control Personal Computer, the C2PC, and Automated Deep Operations Coordination Systems, known as the ADOCS. Although not a system of record, ADOCS was used extensively within CENTCOM to automate and deliberate the reactive targeting process. This would be the first war in which fire support coordination was largely digital, and many lessons will be derived from this experience. In addition to planning, and coordination, the fire cell was equipped to conduct artillery reconnaissance and survey. At the request of Lieutenant Colonel Phil Lark and the 1 MEF Force Fires Plan Officer, Lieutenant Colonel Smythe and his team conducted an artillery reconnaissance of Kuwait's Bubiyan Island on 27 December to determine whether artillery could be feasibly positioned there in support of an assault at the Al Fu Peninsula, as artillery on Bubiyan could range across the narrow Khor al-Abdullah waterways separating Kuwait from Iraq. The Royal Marines planned to conduct the assault early in the campaign, and the Brigadier Gregory, Chief of Royal Artillery and Commanding General of the 1st United Kingdom Armored Division's Offensive Support Group, or the OSG, accompanied the team. They surveyed Bubiyan Island from the shores 35 kilometers inland and confirmed the suitability of a single bridge to the island for heavy vehicles and towed artillery. The team determined that the only suitable firing positions from which to support an assault were the Kuwaiti Coastal Defense artillery positions, located at approximately 2-kilometer intervals along the marshy northern shore of the island. Each of the built-up positions could accommodate a battery of howitzers. This venture marked the beginning of collaboration between the Brit gunners and the cannon cockers of 11th Marines, which would be to the advantage of both during the war. The 1st Marine Division and UK's 1st Armored Division planners met a few days later to work out a detailed plan for the relief in place, or the RIP. The swift RIP of the Al-Barsha area would be critical to sustaining the momentum of the attack. By this time, the planners expected a day sometime during the first week of March, and the British planners were counting on the arrival of the 7th Armored Brigade in time from LD. It was agreed that the relief would be conducted from east to west, beginning with RCT 7 and the 7th Armored Brigade in the AZ Zubair area. This was to be followed by RCT 5 and 16th Air Assault Brigade around the GOSPs. To facilitate close coordination, the UK 1st Division's Tactical Command Post would co-locate with the 1st Marine Division Forward CP for the assault. In addition, a Royal Air Force liaison officer from the RAF regiment supporting the 1st UK Division would move forward with the MWSG 37 to assume control of the FARP site, Safwan Airfield. The plan for the relief of artillery would remain fluid almost up to G-Day. All the time of the RIP coordinating meeting, the British planners believed that only 2 batteries of the 3rd Royal Horse Artillery, or 3 RHA, would be ready to go by G-Day, and both would initially be required to support 3rd Commando's assault on the Al-Fa Peninsula in Qasr. Depending how the fight went in that quarter, there was a chance, rather slim, that the 7th Armored Brigade might not have the support for its affiliated artillery regiment when the RIP in RCT-7 zone occurred. In that case, the Americans would leave a general support artillery battalion and counter-battery radar behind to continue to engage enemy artillery in the Al-Basra area under the tactical command of the British Division. This was offered in good faith, since the Marines could not hand over the counter-battery fight if the 1st UK Division lacked a capability to match whatever indirect fire threat remained in the Al-Zubair and Al-Basra. Teamwork between the 2 divisions was so strong that neither would consider any activity that did not work to the benefit of the other. The 2 divisions shared remarkably similar perspectives on almost every issue, and mutual admiration and trust were the order of the day. On the other hand, the British fire supporters had indicated from the beginning that they were eager to attach the light gun batteries of 7th Para Royal Horse Artillery, 7 RHA, to the U.S. for the opening gambit. They explained that the 16th Air Assault Brigade would not be committed into the RIP, and artillery should not be kept in reserve. In a first meeting between the 2 artillery commanders, Brigadier Gregory confirmed this intention to Colonel Marletto, even though there were some question at the time whether London would permit cross-attachment of units below the brigade level. From that standpoint of facilitating the RIP, however, attaching 7 RHA and the 2nd Battalion 11th Marines to 11 made sense, especially if it came with the British weapons locating radar. If the plan was approved, 16th Air Assault Battalion's affiliated artillery regiment would already be in place when it came up to relieve RCT-5 and the British radar, having been integrated into the counter-battery fight, would have built up its target list and situational awareness. The U.S. planners coveted 3 RHA self-propelled AS-90s with their long-range ammunition. In the end, the timeline for G-Day would slip enough to prevent all 4 of the 3 RHA's batteries from arriving in time for the fight. Thus, the 3rd Battalion 11th Marines, or 311, would cross the line of departure, the LD, with only 2 batteries of the AS-90s attached, while 211 was reinforced by 2 batteries of light guns. As 3 RHA's remaining batteries were freed from the fight on Al-Fa and Qasr, they moved up to join the British commanding element with 311. This would get the 1st UK Division's artillery and radar into position and into the fight, ahead of the British maneuvers brigades, allowing the RIP to proceed seamlessly. From that standpoint of fire support. Meanwhile, the American artillery would be free to lean towards the division's upcoming fight in the west. Sierra Battery 511 with the 15th MEU would support 3rd Commando's assault in the Al-Fa Peninsula from Bubiyan Island. Collaboration between Marine artillerymen and Brit gunners would be a hallmark of the coalition under one MEF. The plan is in place. So now the United States was going to collaborate with the British forces to ensure that they were able to accomplish that mission on Bubiyan Island, to ensure that they would be able to reach all of its targets for the fire support as the ground units maneuvered into position. That was key. Now, because the British and the Americans were working together, this allowed for more batteries to be available for that support to be able to support all of those units. Next week, we're going to move into talking about the intelligence planning that they were going to put into place to make sure that all the knowledge and everything that they needed to know about the enemy, its units, tanks, artillery, counter battery radar, whatever they may have had, they understood what it was, and it would help the 1st Marine Division and all of its allies win the fight. Hero highlight. Colonel Gregory Pappy Boyington, Marine Corps ace credited with the destruction of 28 Japanese aircraft, was awarded the Medal of Honor for extraordinary heroism above and beyond the call of duty. While in command of a Marine fighting squadron in the Central Solomons area from 12 September 1943 to 3 January 1944. He was shot down over Rabaul at a later date, and his capture by the Japanese was followed by 20 months as a prisoner of war. Gregory Boyington was born in Coeur d'Alene, Idaho on 4 December of 1912. He graduated from Lincoln High School in Tacoma, Washington, and majored in aeronautical engineering at the University of Washington, graduating in 1934 with a Bachelor's of Science degree. He was a member of Lambda Chi Alpha fraternity, always an athlete. He was a member of the college wrestling and swimming teams and was a one-time holder of the Pacific Northwest Intercollegiate Middleweight Wrestling title. During a summer vacation, he worked in a mining camp and logging camps in his home state. One summer, he was employed in the Coeur d'Alene Fire Protective Association in road construction and lookout work. The famed flyer started his military career while still attending college. As a member of the Reserve Officers Training Corps for 4 years, he became a cadet captain. He was commissioned a second lieutenant in the Coast Artillery Reserve in June of 1934 and served 2 months of active duty in the 630th Coast Artillery in Fort Woodron, Washington. On 13 January 1935, he enlisted in the Volunteer Marine Corps Reserve. He went on active duty that date and returned to inactive duty on 16 July. In the meantime, he had become a draftsman and engineer for a Boeing aircraft company of Seattle. It was on 18 February of 1936 that he accepted an appointment as an aviation cadet in the Marine Corps Reserve and was assigned to the Naval Air Station Pensacola, Florida for flight training. Years before, he flew when he was only 8 years old with Clyde Pangborn, who later flew the Pacific nonstop. He was designated a naval aviator on 11 March of 1937 and was transferred to Quantico, Virginia for duty with Aircraft 1 Fleet Marine Force. He was discharged from the Marine Corps Reserve on 1 July 1937 in order to accept a second lieutenant's commission in the regular Marine Corps the following day. Detached to Basic School Philadelphia in July 1938, Second Lieutenant Boyington was transferred to the 2nd Marine Aircraft Group at San Diego Naval Air Station upon completion of his studies. With that unit, he took part in fleet problems of the aircraft carrier USS Lexington and the USS Yorktown. Promoted to first lieutenant on 4 November 1940, he returned to Pensacola as an instructor the next month. First Lieutenant Boyington resigned his commission in the Marine Corps on 26 August of 1941. To accept a position as a Central Aircraft Manufacturing Company, CAMCO was a civilian organization formed for the protection of the Burma Road. The unit later became known as the American Volunteer Group, the famed Flying Tigers of China. During his months with the Tigers, he became a squadron commander and shot down 6 Japanese planes to secure the appreciable lead over the American aces who didn't get into the fight until after 7 December of 1941. He flew 300 combat hours before the AVG disbanded. He returned to the United States in July of 1942 and accepted a commission as a first lieutenant in the Marine Corps Reserve on 29 September of 1942. He reported to active duty at the Naval Air Station San Diego on 23 November 1942 and was assigned to the Marine Corps Aircraft Wing Pacific. He was promoted to Major temporarily warrant the next day. Major Boyington joined Marine Corps Group 11 of the 1st Marine Aircraft Wing and became commanding officer of the Marine Fighting Squadron 214 after a short tour in the Solomons with another squadron. The new squadron was made up of a group of casuals, replacements, and green pilots and was dubbed the Black Sheep Squadron. Before organizing the Black Sheep, Major Boyington participated in combat at Guadalcanal on April 1943 as executive officer of Marine Fighting Squadron 121, but had added no enemy planes to his score. However, during those 2 periods of intense activity in the Russell Islands, New Georgia, and Bougainville, New Britain, New Ireland areas, and nicknamed Pappy because of his older age, 31, compared to that of his men, added to his total almost daily. During his squadron's first tour of combat duty, Major Boyington personally shot down 14 enemy fighter planes in 32 days. On 17 December of 1943, he added the first Allied fighter sweep over impregnable Rabaul. By 27 December, his record was 25. He tied the then existing American record of 26 planes on 3 January when he shot down another fighter over Rabaul. Typical of Major Boyington's daring feast is his attack of Kali Airdome at the southern tip of Bougainville on 17 October 1943. He and 24 fighters circled the field presently where 60 hostile aircraft were grounded, goading the enemy into sending up a large numerically superior force. In the fierce battle that followed, 20 of the enemy planes were shot out of the skies. The Black Sheep roared back to their base without the loss of a single aircraft. On 3 January 1944, 48 American planes, including 1 division, 4 planes, from the Black Sheep Squadron took off from Bougainville for a fighter sweep over Rabaul. Major Boyington was on the tactical commander of the flight and arrived over Rabaul at 8 o'clock in the morning. In the ensuing action, he was seen shotting down his 26th plane. He then became mixed in the general melee of diving, swooping planes, and was not seen or heard from again. Following a determined search, which proved futile, Major Boyington was declared as missing in action. While a prisoner of the Japanese, he was selected for temporary promotion to the rank of lieutenant colonel. During mid-August of 1945, following the atomic bombing of Hiroshima and Nagasaki and the subsequent Japanese capitulation, he was liberated from Japanese custody at Omori prison camp in the Tokyo area on 29 August and arrived in the United States shortly afterwards. On 6 September, the top ace who had been a prisoner of the Japanese for the past 20 months accepted his temporary lieutenant colonel commission in the Marine Corps. At the time of his release, it was confirmed that Lieutenant Colonel Boyington had accounted for the downing of 2 Japanese planes on 3 January before he himself was shot down, to set his total at 28 planes, which was the highest total for Marines. Shortly after his return to his homeland, Lieutenant Colonel Boyington was ordered to Washington to receive the nation's highest honor, the Medal of Honor, from President Harry S. Truman. The medal had been awarded by President Franklin D. Roosevelt in March of 1944 and held in the Capitol until such time he was able to receive it. On 5 October 1945, Nimitz Day, Lieutenant Colonel Boyington appeared at the White House with a number of other Marines and naval personnel and was decorated by President Harry S. Truman. On the previous day, he was presented the Navy Cross by the Commandant of the Marine Corps for ACE's heroic achievement on the day he was declared missing in action. Following the receipt of his Medal of Honor and Navy Cross, Lieutenant Colonel Boyington made a victory bond tour. Originally ordered by the Marine Corps School's Quantico, he was later directed to report to the Commanding General Marine Air West Coast, Marine Corps Air Depot, Miramar, San Diego, California. Lieutenant Colonel Boyington was retired from the Marine Corps on 1 August 1947, and because he was specially commended for the performance of duty in actual combat, was advanced to his final rank of colonel. Colonel Boyington died on 11 January of 1988 and was buried in Arlington National Cemetery. In addition to the Medal of Honor and Navy Cross, Colonel Boyington held the American Defense Service Medal, Asiatic Pacific Campaign Medal, American Campaign Medal, and the World War II Victory Medal. The Quarterdeck. Pappy Boyington. What an American, what a man, what a hero. Surviving captivity as a POW during that time, making it back home and continuing to live his life, received that Medal of Honor from the President of the United States. These are the kind of men that make it possible for Marines like me and the next generation of Marines to do what we do, to try to fulfill and continue the legacy that they set before us, to ensure that our beloved Marine Corps continues to thrive and remain a constant fear to our enemies, because they know what the Marines are capable of conducting in a battlefield. Now, with the 11th Marines, Colonel Marletto has his team of fire support planners into place, and they're also going to be working together with the British forces to ensure that they have everything covered and they're able to move into place and do an exchange of locations, of areas of operation. Next week, we'll take a look at the actual intelligence planning on what they're going to put into place to gather all the rest of the intel that they haven't gotten since the advanced party was there. So that's going to be very important. It's going to be key to make sure that they gather all that information to make sure that they're going to be successful in the upcoming fight. I also want to ensure that we all remember and take time to remember our loved ones, our brothers, our sisters that died in combat. They went into harm's way and ultimately paid the biggest sacrifice that they could possibly give to this great country, our nation, the United States of America. Staff Sergeant Bell was one of those. And his legacy, his memory is going to continue to live not only in me, but with all the Marines and sailors that served under him. So always remember all those families that have lost those individuals. Keep them in your hearts, in your minds, so that way they know that we still have the memories of their loved ones in our minds and in our hearts. So their legacy will continue to live forever. Until next week, this is Miguel the Gunny Signs sounding Liberty Call.
Get out the bus!
I do solemnly swear.
That I will support and defend
The Constitution of the United States.
against all enemies, foreign and domestic.